The night was cruel, colder than anything she had ever felt before. The alien mother walked slowly through the endless snow, her legs shaking with every step. Her arms held tightly around the small bundle close to her chest. Inside that bundle was her tiny child, her only reason to keep moving. The child's breaths were weak, almost fading, and each time the mother lowered her head, she feared it might be the last. Snow cut against her skin like knives. The wind screamed through the empty wasteland, and the world seemed ready to bury both of them under white silence. She had no more food, no more strength, and no one left to call for help. Her people had abandoned her. They said she was too weak, too poor, too much of a burden. And so she had left, clutching her daughter, praying for a miracle that never came. Her eyes searched the dark horizon, but there was nothing. No light, no village, no fire, just emptiness. Her heart sank. She whispered to her child, her voice broken and soft. "Sleep, little one, Mama is here, I will not leave you." But inside, she knew she could not keep her promise. The storm grew worse. Her legs finally gave up, and she collapsed into the snow. She shielded her child with her body, wrapping the thin blanket tighter. The cold pressed into her bones. Her lips turned blue, her eyes heavy. She thought of her daughter's small face. She thought of how unfair it was to bring her child into a world so cruel. Her body trembled, then slowly stilled. She closed her eyes, ready to surrender to the cold. At least, she thought, her child would fall asleep in her arms and never feel alone. She held that thought tightly as she held her baby. Then, footsteps, heavy, strong, cutting through the storm. She tried to open her eyes, but her body would not obey. She thought, maybe it was a dream. But then she felt it, arms, strong arms, lifting both her and the child out of the snow. Her breath caught. A voice spoke, low but firm. It was not her language, but she understood the meaning. "Hold on," it said. "You're safe now." Warmth pressed against her cold skin. A thick coat wrapped around her child, and she felt heat spreading at last. She wanted to ask who it was. She wanted to fight, to run. But she had no strength. Her last thought before the darkness swallowed her was strange. Why would anyone save her when even her own people did not? The man carried them through the storm, his boots breaking the frozen ground, his breath heavy, but he did not stop. The child gave a weak cry, and he pulled the blanket tighter around her, his jaw set, his eyes sharp against the snow. He would not let them die here, not tonight. Inside his small wooden shelter, fire burned bright. He placed the mother and child near it. His rough hands worked quickly. Dry cloth, warm water, bread on the table. He moved with purpose, not waiting for thanks, not asking questions. He had seen death in the snow too many times. He refused to see it again. The alien mother stirred, half-conscious. The warmth shocked her body. She blinked slowly, her vision blurry, and saw him. A human, tall, scarred, his face tired, yet calm. She had been told humans were selfish, dangerous, even cruel. But this one knelt beside the fire, feeding wood into it to keep it alive. Her child shifted in the coat, small eyes opening for a moment, then closing again in safe sleep. For the first time, the mother felt something she had forgotten long ago: hope. The man glanced at her. His eyes were not soft, but not cold either. He simply nodded as if to say, "You survived, that's enough." She wanted to speak, to ask why, but the words died in her throat. Exhaustion pulled her back into darkness. She only knew one thing. When she closed her eyes this time, it was not to die, but to live. Because someone, a stranger, had chosen not to let her go, and outside, the storm still raged. But inside, the fire burned. And for the first time in days, the alien mother and her child were not alone. The crackling of fire filled the small wooden shelter. Its glow pushed back the darkness, painting the room with warmth. The alien mother opened her eyes slowly. Her body was heavy, her skin still cold but no longer frozen. For a moment she could not understand where she was. Her first thought was of her child. She sat up quickly, her weak body almost falling. Her eyes searched the room in panic. And then she saw. Her tiny daughter was wrapped in a thick human coat, lying close to the fire, breathing gently. The color had returned to the child's cheeks. The faint rise and fall of her chest was proof of life. Tears stung the mother's eyes. She turned her gaze and finally noticed him. The man sat on a wooden chair near the fire, his face half lit by the flames. His clothes were rough, his boots still wet from snow. He looked strong, but there was a heaviness in his eyes, a silence that carried stories of battles she could not yet guess. He noticed she was awake, but he did not speak immediately. Fear rushed into her chest. Humans, she had been told, were dangerous, greedy, always wanting something in return. Why had he saved her? Why had he carried her and her child through the storm? Her instincts told her to grab her daughter and run, but her body was too weak, and deep down she knew, without him, she would already be dead. The man finally stood. His steps were steady, but careful. He carried a bowl of steaming liquid and placed it on the floor in front of her. The smell was strong, warm, filled with herbs and meat. Her stomach twisted in hunger, but her pride held her back. What if it was a trick? He knelt not too close, and with his rough hand he gestured for her to eat. His voice was low, the words strange but simple. Food. Eat. She looked at him, her large alien eyes filled with doubt. She whispered, "Why?" Her voice was cracked, weak, almost lost. He only frowned slightly and said, "You're alive, that's enough." The alien mother's hands shook as she took the bowl. The warmth seeped into her fingers. She lifted the spoon and tasted. It was not like the food of her people, but it was rich and filling. Her body responded before her mind could resist. Each bite gave her strength back. Her child stirred, and she guided the spoon to the little lips. The child swallowed eagerly. The sound of her daughter eating broke something inside her chest. Relief. So strong it hurt. The man watched quietly. His eyes did not wander. He did not move closer. He simply sat back, as if he wanted to make sure they were safe. The fire popped. The storm roared outside. But inside the small shelter, there was calm. After. Sometimes she spoke again, her words soft, unsure. "Humans, why save us?" She expected him to laugh, to demand payment, but he only looked at the fire and said, "I don't let children die in the snow." His voice carried no pride, only fact. The alien mother lowered her eyes. She did not know whether to trust him, but his actions spoke louder than any words. He had carried them through death's mouth. He had fed them, given them warmth, and he had asked for nothing in return. Her daughter yawned, curling deeper into the human coat. The mother pulled her closer, covering her with her arms. Her eyes never left the man. He was strange, silent, but not cruel. The stories she had heard about humans seemed weak now compared to what stood before her. Silence stretched, but it was not empty. It was the kind of silence that carried unspoken truths. She wanted to ask more, to know who he was, where he came from, but exhaustion still pressed on her body. The man stood again, adding more wood to the fire. He checked the door, listening to the storm outside. His movements were practiced, like someone used to danger, used to survival. Then he glanced back at her, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes. Not pity, not demand, but a quiet respect. The alien mother lay back slowly, her daughter safe in her arms, her mind full of questions, her heart full of confusion. She had been ready to die, ready to end in the snow. Yet now, here she was, alive, her child, breathing, and a human keeping watch by the fire. Her eyes closed, not from despair, but from something she had almost forgotten. Rest. Outside, the storm howled like a beast, but inside a new story had begun, and though she did not yet trust him, she knew one thing clearly. That night, for the first time in many nights, she did not feel completely alone. The first rays of pale morning light slipped through the cracks of the wooden shelter. The fire had burned low, but its warmth still lingered. The alien mother stirred slowly, her tired body heavy yet alive. She blinked and looked to her side. Her tiny daughter was still sleeping, cheeks no longer pale, breath soft and steady. Relief washed over her like a tide. Her heart tightened. She pulled the child closer and whispered, "You are safe, little one." Her words trembled because deep inside she knew the truth. Without the human, her child would already be gone. She shifted and noticed the man again. He was awake, already, moving with quiet purpose. His strong hands fixed the fire, his face expressionless but steady. When he glanced back, she quickly looked away, fear mixing with gratitude in her chest. He did not speak much, but soon the smell of food filled the small shelter. The man set a pot near the flames, steam rising. The alien mother's stomach growled painfully, reminding her of days without food. She had eaten almost nothing so her child could live a little longer. Now the hunger was too sharp to ignore. The human noticed. His lips moved slightly, but his words were simple. Eat. He placed a wooden bowl in front of her. This time she hesitated longer, her pride, her fear, her doubt all tangled inside her. But when she looked down at her daughter, she knew she could not refuse. She picked up the spoon. Her hand shook. She lifted it to her mouth. The taste was rough, earthy, different from anything of her people. Yet it was warm, thick, and alive with strength. Her body reacted instantly, craving more. Each swallow felt like life pouring back into her veins. Her child stirred awake, small eyes opening. The little one whimpered weakly. The mother leaned down and whispered, "Shh, Mama has food now." She carefully cooled the spoonful and guided it to her daughter's lips. The child swallowed, then reached again. A soft sound escaped, not quite laughter, but no longer pain. The alien mother's eyes blurred with tears. She had thought she would never hear that sound again. For a moment she forgot her fear of the man. She forgot the stories told to her about humans. She only saw her child eating, alive, safe. The man watched silently, his arms crossed, his gaze steady. He did not interrupt, did not demand thanks. But when the child finished and leaned against her mother's chest, the man finally spoke, his voice low, rough. "She is strong." The mother froze, surprised he had spoken of her daughter at all. In her people's eyes, the child had been weak, a burden, an unwanted mouth. But this human had carried her, had fed her, and now called her strong. The words broke something inside the mother's chest. She whispered back, her voice soft, She is all I have." The man gave a small nod, as if those words needed no further explanation. For a long time, silence returned, only the fire cracking and the storm still whispering outside. But it was not the same silence as before. It was softer, almost safe. The mother looked at the man again, studying him quietly. His face was scarred, his shoulders broad, his hands carried both strength and wear. He looked like a man who had fought many battles, yet he had chosen to fight the snow for her, a stranger. Her fear did not vanish, but it softened, just a little. She wanted to ask him why he had done all this, but her words caught in her throat. The answer might be too heavy, too painful. Instead, she whispered almost to herself, "Why would you help me? Why would you help us?" Her eyes stayed low, afraid of his reply. The human leaned forward slightly. He looked into the fire, his jaw tight, his voice steady. Because no one should die cold, not a child, not a mother. The alien mother's breath caught. Her chest tightened. Her people had not thought that way. To them, the weak were discarded, left behind. But here was a human who spoke as if life itself had value, even when it belonged to strangers, even when it belonged to her. Her child drifted back into sleep. Full and warm, the mother pulled the little body closer, her arms wrapped protectively, her eyes still on the human. He did not smile. He did not soften. But his presence felt like a wall between her and death. She closed her eyes slowly, her thoughts tangled. She still did not know who he was. She still feared what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, as her child slept peacefully in her arms, she knew one truth. They had survived, and survival, she realized, was no longer because of her alone. It was because of him, the human stranger. The fire burned brighter, the storm raged weaker, and in that fragile silence the alien mother began to feel something dangerous but undeniable: hope. The night was quiet at first. The fire burned slowly in the small shelter, filling the air with warmth. The alien mother sat close to it, her daughter asleep in her arms. For the first time in many nights she felt safe. She glanced at the man, the human, who sat near the door, sharpening a blade with calm focus. But safety, she learned long ago, never lasted. At first it was only a faint sound carried by the wind, a low growl beneath the storm. The mother froze, her large alien eyes wide in the firelight. She listened harder. Her heart pounded. She knew that sound. It was not the wind, not the storm. It was the sound of hunters. The human noticed too. His eyes lifted, sharp and cold. He set the blade down and reached for a weapon leaning against the wall. It was heavy, metal, strange to her people, but it looked deadly in his hands. He did not speak, but his body was tense, ready. The growls came again, closer this time, followed by scratching outside the wooden walls. The mother clutched her child tightly, pulling the thin blanket over her. Her breaths came fast, her heart hammering like drums. Outside, shadows moved against the snow, dark shapes circling the shelter. Their yellow eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, creatures of the frozen lands, predators that hunted anything alive. Tonight, they had caught the scent of warmth, of food, of blood. The man stood at the door, his back straight, his weapon firm in his hands. The mother whispered shakily, What are they?" But he did not answer. His focus was only on the danger outside. Suddenly, a sharp thud shook the wooden wall. Then another. The beasts were testing the shelter, their claws scratching against the wood. Their growls grew louder, teeth gnashing in hunger. The alien child whimpered in her sleep, and the mother pressed her hand gently over her daughter's ears, whispering, "Shh, stay quiet, my little one." But her own fear leaked into every word. Then it happened. One of the creatures leapt, slamming into the door with force. The wood cracked, splinters falling. The fire flickered. The mother gasped. Clutching her child even tighter, she looked at the human, fear shining in her eyes. He did not move back. He kicked the door shut again with one strong foot and then, without hesitation, pulled it open. The freezing wind and snow rushed inside, and with it, a beast tall as a man, its fur black, teeth long and dripping, eyes burning with hunger. The mother screamed, curling protectively over her child, but the man did not flinch. His weapon roared, a blast of light and sound shaking the room. The beast fell backward, its body landing in the snow outside. The others roared in anger, their eyes glowing brighter, circling faster. The human stepped outside into the storm, slamming the door shut behind him, leaving the mother inside with only the firelight and the sound of her racing heart. She wanted to cry out, to beg him not to go, but her voice broke in her throat. She could only listen, clutching her daughter, while the night outside exploded with chaos. There were gunshots, sharp and echoing, then snarls and screams. The snow crunched under heavy bodies, growls and cries mixed with the crack of steel and fire. She imagined the beast circling him, clawing at him. She imagined his blood staining the snow. Minutes felt like hours. The mother's breath came in ragged gasps, every sound outside twisting her insides with fear. She whispered over and over to her daughter, "Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me," even though the child was fast asleep, unaware of the battle raging just beyond the door. Then silence. Heavy silence. Only the wind remaining. The mother's eyes fixed on the door, her body shaking. She waited, praying, begging in her heart for the man to return, not knowing why she cared so much, only knowing that without him, she and her child would not survive another night. At last, the door opened. The human stepped inside, his coat torn, a cut across his cheek. his hand stained with blood, not his own. He pushed the door shut, leaning against it for a moment before walking back to the fire. His weapon hung loosely in his hand, smoke still rising from it. The mother's eyes widened. She wanted to speak, to ask if he was hurt, but no words came. She could only watch as he dropped heavily into the chair. His chest rose and fell, tired but steady. He looked at her, his face calm despite the blood, and he said only 2 words, "You're safe." The fire crackled. Shadows danced against the walls. Outside, the snow slowly covered the bodies of the beasts, erasing them from sight. The alien mother held her child tighter. Her heart beat with fear still, but also with something else, a strange feeling she had not known in a long time. It was not just safety, it was trust, fragile but growing. For the first time, she realized this human was not just a rescuer, not just a stranger. He was something far more dangerous, something far more precious. Hope in human form. The storm did not end that night. It howled and screamed outside, burying the land deeper under white silence. Inside the small shelter, the fire kept burning. But the alien mother could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard again the growls of the beasts, the crash of claws against wood, and the thunder of the human's weapon. Her daughter slept peacefully, safe in her arms. Her tiny breaths warmed her chest, but the mother's own heart was restless. Her eyes often turned toward the man. He sat near the fire, quiet as always, cleaning his weapon with slow, steady movements. His face gave nothing away, yet his presence filled the room like a wall of stone. She wanted to speak, but the words would not come easily. For so long she had carried her pain alone. For so long she had believed no one would listen, no one would care. But something inside her had shifted, perhaps because this man had not let her die, perhaps because he had fought the night to protect her child. At last her voice broke the silence, soft and trembling. You don't ask, but maybe you should know." The man glanced at her, his scarred face unreadable. He gave a small nod, nothing more. He would not press her, but he would listen. The alien mother looked down at her child, brushing a strand of hair from the little forehead. Her throat tightened, her eyes filled with tears she had long held back. "My people cast me out," she whispered. "They said I was weak. They said my child was nothing but a mouth to feed, a burden. They left us to die." Her words cracked like glass, breaking after years of silence. She pulled her daughter closer, her voice shaking. "I tried to beg. I tried to work. But no one wanted me. They said I was cursed. They said my child would never survive. I walked into the snow because there was nothing left. No food, no fire, no kindness, I thought. I thought it was better to die together than to watch her suffer alone." The firelight glistened in her tears as they finally fell. She covered her face with one hand, ashamed, but still her voice carried, raw and fragile. "When I closed my eyes, I prayed it would be quick. I prayed she would not feel the pain. I did not pray for myself, only for her." The shelter was silent except for the storm. The man set his weapon aside. His eyes were on the fire, yet his voice, when it came, was steady and sure. "Your child is not a burden." The mother lifted her head, eyes wide. For a heartbeat she could not breathe. She had never heard those words, not once, not from her family, not from her people, not even from herself. The man looked at her now, his gaze firm. "She breathes, she fights. That is strength, and you," he paused, his jaw tightening. "You walked through the storm carrying her. That is not weakness." Her chest ached, her lips parted, but no words came. His simple truth struck deeper than any kindness she had known. Her tears flowed freely now, not from despair, but from the strange weight lifting off her shoulders. She whispered, "But I failed. I had nothing left if you had not found us." The man shook his head, cutting her words short. "You did not fail. You are here. She is alive. That is what matters." The alien mother stared at him, her hands shaking as she pressed her daughter closer. The world she had known felt distant now, a world where compassion was weakness, where survival meant leaving others behind. Yet here was a man who spoke as if life itself carried meaning, as if even the smallest breath mattered. Her heart trembled with something she did not understand, a fragile warmth mixed with fear. She lowered her eyes, whispering, "Why do you care? We are not your people." The human leaned back in his chair. His face shadowed by the firelight, he was quiet for a long time, then he said, "Because once, I lost someone in the snow too." The mother's breath caught. She looked at him sharply, but he said no more. His eyes returned to the fire, his silence heavier than any story. She realized then that perhaps he carried his own ghosts, his own grief. And maybe that was why he had not left them behind. Her chest filled with unspoken words. Gratitude she did not know how to give. Trust she did not yet dare to offer. But one truth burned inside her now, stronger than the storm. Outside, she was not alone anymore. She held her daughter close, her tears drying, her voice soft as a promise. "I will not give up again." The man gave no reply, but the faintest nod of his head told her he had heard. The storm raged on, but inside the shelter, a new bond had formed, fragile yet real. For the first time, the alien mother felt she did not have to carry her burden alone. And for the first time, the human was no longer just a stranger. He was the reason her child's heart still beat. The storm finally began to weaken. Days had passed inside the small shelter, and though the world outside was still covered in snow, the wind no longer screamed like a beast. The alien mother stood at the window staring at the frozen land. Her child sat near the fire, bundled in the human's thick coat, drawing shapes in the ash with a small stick. The mother's heart was heavy. She knew she had to decide. Soon the snow would clear enough for her to leave. The path back to her people, back to the same world that had cast her out, was still there. She could try to return, beg once more for shelter, or wander until she found another village. But deep down, she feared she already knew what awaited. Her rejection, cold eyes, empty hands behind her, the human worked silently, repairing his tools, sharpening his blade. He had not asked her to stay, nor had he asked her to leave. He had simply given them shelter, fire, and food. But the weight of choice sat on her shoulders heavier than any snow. Her daughter looked up suddenly, laughing softly as the human handed her a piece of dried bread. The child reached out with both hands, her tiny smile brighter than the fire itself. The man said nothing, only gave a small nod as if her happiness was enough. The mother's chest tightened. She had not seen her daughter smile like that in so long. In her people's eyes, children were only worth the strength they could give. But here, the human had treated her daughter not as a burden, but as someone who deserved to live. That night, as the fire burned low, she finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but steady. "When the storm ends, I must choose, do I return to my people? Or—" She hesitated, unable to finish. The man looked at her, his scarred face calm. "The choice is yours," he said simply. Then he turned back to the fire, as if the matter was already settled. The mother frowned, anger sparking inside her. "Do you not care?" She whispered, "We lived because of you. Does it mean nothing if we walk away?" For the first time, his eyes locked on hers, sharp and steady. "It means you live. That is enough. Stay. Leave. That is not my decision." His words cut deep, not in cruelty, but in truth. He had given her freedom, and freedom was heavier than chains. She lowered her eyes, her hands trembling as they held her child close. The following morning, the snow outside glistened under pale sunlight. The storm was truly gone. The land stretched wide and silent. Paths open once more. The mother stood at the door, her daughter in her arms. She looked out, and for a long moment, she imagined walking into that world, searching for her people, begging them again. Perhaps they would take her back. Perhaps they would not. But then she turned and her gaze fell on the human. He sat by the fire, feeding it more wood. His broad shoulders bent slightly, his movements steady. He looked ordinary. Yet everything about him had become extraordinary to her. Without him, she and her child would not be breathing now. Her daughter wriggled, small arms stretching toward the man. The little one laughed again, a sound as pure as light. The mother's heart broke and healed at the same time. The human noticed. His lips curved, not into a smile, but into something close, a softening of his face. He reached out and lifted the child with ease, placing her carefully on his knee. The girl leaned against him, safe, warm. Her laughter filled the room once more. The mother stared, her choice suddenly clear. It was not weakness to stay, it was not shame to accept kindness. It was survival. It was life. She stepped forward slowly, her voice soft but strong. "We will not leave." The man looked up. His eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then he gave a single nod, no words. But in that small gesture she saw acceptance. The fire burned brighter as if it too agreed. Outside the snow was endless, but inside the shelter something new had begun. The mother sat near the fire, watching as her daughter leaned against the man's chest, her small hand gripping his coat. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was not only surviving, but living. The choice had been made. She would not return to a world that had abandoned her. She would not wander lost in the cold again. Here in this small shelter with a human stranger, she had found something her people had never given her: hope. And as the firelight danced in her daughter's eyes, the mother whispered, "In her heart, this is our home now." The first true dawn after the storm arrived quietly. The sky was pale blue, soft light spreading across the endless white land. The snow glittered like millions of tiny crystals. The alien mother stood at the doorway of the small wooden shelter, her daughter in her arms. She breathed deeply, the cold air sharp in her lungs, but it no longer felt like death. It felt like the beginning of something new. Inside, the human prepared quietly, as he always did. His hands checked the tools, fixed his blade, and added wood to the fire before letting it rest. His movements were steady, practiced, never wasted. The mother watched him for a moment, her heart caught between gratitude and something deeper she could not yet name. Her daughter wriggled in her arms, reaching again toward the man. The girl laughed softly, calling in her childish voice, not with words of language, but with sounds that carried meaning. She wanted him. She trusted him. Her little hands stretched until the man finally turned. His rough face softened just enough as he took the child. Into his arms, the mother's chest tightened. She had never seen her daughter so free, so safe. The child leaned against the man's shoulder, small fingers gripping his coat, her laughter filling the room brighter than the fire itself. For a long moment, the mother only stood there, staring. She thought of all the nights she had walked through the snow alone, all the cruel words of her people, all the times she believed she was nothing but a failure. Yet here she was, alive, her child alive. Because of this human, her voice broke, the silence, soft but firm. "We will stay," she repeated, this time not only to him but to herself, a promise sealed in her own heart. The man looked at her, his eyes steady, unreadable as always, but he gave a single nod, the kind that spoke more than words. He did not question, he did not argue, he simply accepted. The days that followed were slow but different. Together they repaired the shelter. They gathered wood. They hunted when needed. The mother learned how he moved through the snow with strength and silence. She learned to light the fire the way he did. She learned that his silence was not coldness, but patience, and slowly she found her voice again. Sometimes at night, when the child was asleep, she would tell him more, small pieces of her past, the family who had abandoned her, the tribe that saw weakness where there was only survival. Each word was heavy, but speaking them in his presence felt lighter. He never interrupted, never judged. He simply listened, as if her story mattered. One night, as the fire flickered low, she asked, "Do you not wonder who I am?" The man looked at her, his face calm. "You are a mother," he said. "That is enough." Her eyes stung with tears. His answer was simple. Yet it gave her more dignity than her own people ever had. The little girl grew stronger with each passing day. She laughed more, played more. Her tiny feet even took a few shaky steps across the wooden floor. The man's large hands were always there to steady her, and the mother would watch, her heart swelling with something new, something like family. When the next dawn arrived, brighter and warmer than before, the mother stepped outside again. This time the man stood beside her, the child perched safely on his shoulders. The land was still frozen, still harsh, but it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a wide, open road waiting for them. She looked up at the child, small hands gripping the man's hair as she laughed at the sparkling snow. The sound echoed in the quiet morning, and the mother realized something powerful. She was no longer afraid of tomorrow. Her voice was quiet but full of strength. I thought the world had ended for us. I thought we had nothing left. But now I see we have everything. The man did not answer. He only glanced at her, his eyes steady as ever. Yet in their silence she felt his agreement. The alien mother reached out, her hand trembling slightly. Then, with courage she had not known, she still possessed, she placed it in his. His grip was firm, steady, not pulling, not forcing, only holding, and in that simple gesture she felt a bond stronger than blood, stronger than fear. Together, they stepped forward into the snow. The storm was gone, but the land was still cold. Still, with every step, the warmth between them grew. For the first time, the alien mother did not see herself as broken. She did not see her daughter as a burden. She did not see the human as a stranger. She saw something new, something rare, something worth living for. Hope. And as the dawn spread across the frozen horizon, 3 figures walked together. An alien, mother, her child, and a human man, no longer alone, no longer lost, but a family born not of blood but of choice. A new dawn had truly begun.